Good evening, good afternoon. Welcome back to twitch.tv/Hive Esports Games for week 2 of the Hive Esports League of Legends series Aram Mayhem 2v2 tournament. Now, in week 1, of course, we saw our first 2 games. It was Nat and Joe versus Team Ultimus and Yowie Addicts Recovering versus Flowers in Autumn, with Yowie Addicts and Team Ultimus coming out victorious in their respective games. And as you can see, those two are playing again today on the left-hand side of your screen in games 1 and 2 respectively. But that was all week 1. If you're unfamiliar with the Aram Mayhem 2v2 tournament that Hive Esports are running, George, why don't you give us a quick rundown if they miss week 1?
Yes, well, we are running an Aram Mayhem 2v2 tournament, as you just said. It is Aram Mayhem, and it's 2v2s. Aram is a game mode in League of Legends where you get given random champions, and Aram Mayhem specifically gives you random augments on top of the random champions. So a lot of diversity, a lot of dynamic gameplay, lots of fun, hopefully. Yeah, lots of competitiveness as well, so exciting.
Absolutely, and of course we've seen, if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, half of the teams already in action in Yowie Addicts and Team Ultimus. Seal9 and Grumpy still yet to play in this league phase, of which will last 6 weeks. What are we potentially expecting now that at least a few of our players have had time to embed themselves into the tournament, start to figure out exactly how 2v2 Aram Mayhem differs from 5v5 and what might be the keys to victory?
Yeah, definitely going to give them a little bit of an advantage. Definitely going to have a little bit more knowledge, but I don't think it's going to be that much. Obviously, our other players do play League of Legends. They do play ARAMs, so I think it's still going to be really close games today.
Absolutely, and while we have got some downtime, got a few minutes until game 1 starts with Yowie Addicts recovering and Seal9. Any predictions potentially for what we for who might win in game number 1? Of course, we've seen Yowie Addicts; they were a very capable team in their first game against Flowers in Autumn. But now Seal9, of course, a team we're not familiar with. That's Stefan Cloudy, who we have not yet seen in action in this tournament. What might we be expecting to see in game 1 and of course game 2 as well?
Well, obviously, last week Yowie Addicts were our winners for game 2. So a little bit of competition there. Potentially going to see them doing well again. But I know Seal9 are really good players in general. And I know they've been strategizing this ARAM, so expect to see some meta gaming on the Hive Esports League of Legends ARAM Mayhem 2v2 tournament. If we can make that longer, please let us know, because we will. But yeah, I think it's going to be a somewhat even game, but I'm leaning more towards Seal9.
Seal9 winning would definitely tighten things up in the league phase standings. Of course, only 2 teams have managed to knock up any points so far, with, of course, Yowie Addicts recovering and Team Ultimus both getting all 3 points from their opening game, so they sit in first and second place. Everyone else essentially still tied for third, but the bottom 2 out of the 6 will be eliminated before the semi-finals. And of course, Team Ultimus versus Grumpies. Of course, Grumpies we've not yet seen in action either. But Team Ultimus we saw versus Nat and Joe, of course, last week. They had a playstyle that was definitely, some would take it very different, very subversive for what someone might expect. Of course, Aram Mayhem by its nature, it's very sort of dive straight into the fight and take what you can get. But especially the starts to those games between Nat and Joe and Team Ultimus, they were very, very slow, very few picks or fights really at all.
Yeah, they definitely took a slower approach to ARAM Mayhem, which is good to see because it adds a little bit of diversity. However, I'm more of a fight person. I want to see them beating each other up. I want to see them at each other's throats. But again, if it's gonna get you that win, whatever you have to do. I mean, who wouldn't want the B trophy here? Like, didn't get to see him last week because he was on a little bit of a vacation, but he is back now. He's been on a little bit of an adventure today, actually. But yeah, he'll be spectating with us as we go into our next game soon. But yeah, I think it's gonna be some good games.
Definitely, we'll see. Yowie Addicts recovering versus Seal9. Game 1 of week 2 for the Hive Esports League of Legends series coming up right now.
And here we go. We are in the middle of the abyss, and we are back. Okay, as we can see here, Yaoi Addict on Talon, Extra Thick on Ari, Steph on Kane, Kane being his most played champion, period. Whenever we have League of Legends matches, he always manages to get banned. And Cloudy here on Nidalee. Nidalee being a far-range mage champion, gonna be looking for that poke. Looking here with Final Form, the ultimate. Every time she ults, she's gonna get a lot of stats from it. And yeah, she ults relatively often due to her being a shapeshifter. But some good characters in play this game.
Definitely, I do wonder if Steph being drawn with his preferred champion may come to the advantage here of Seal9. As we see already a first fight of the game here. We've seen some sort of casting, glancing blows being thrown, but no picks. It's still 0-0 as they run 2 minutes exactly on the clock. Steph has been worn down to about half HP, but no inhibitors, no turrets have been touched just yet. Steph will be taking the opportunity to heal now. Gets a smidgen over 50% now. Extra Thick tries to land a couple long-range blows, but nothing going there. And now Seal9 jumping straight in. Yaoi Addict in a 2v1. Now very low health, and first blood does go to Cloudy as Nidalee there. And now Extra Thick in a 2v1 is going to come under some pressure here, despite Steph being on low health. Can they finish the team wipe here? The ace to start off game 1 strong here, but Seal9 now backing off Extra Thick, seeks cover behind the turret on very low HP. Yaoi Addict now back in the fight to make it a 2v2, but Seal9 with the first blood of the game, 1-0.
Yeah, a very quick, interesting fight there. Steph only just barely surviving. But yeah, Cloudy on full health. Again, Nidalee being a little bit of a poke champion while in her human form. However, a very divey, fighty, bursty champion in her cooler form, as we just see her going into there. Extra Thick and Yaoi Addict both on level 6 now. Definitely gonna help them a lot more. I think their ultimates are a little bit stronger than Cloudy and Steph's, so potentially more use cases for them. However, Steph's ultimate on Kane allows him to be untargetable for a short duration, so some well-timed ults are going to be needed this game.
Definitely, we'll see how that pans out. Of course, still only 3.5 minutes on the clock, and again, back to a very slow rate of play here between these two. Simply the minions doing most of the fighting here, but now Steph in a 2v1, but slightly sort of invisible there. I do wonder if that's potentially some sort of damage immunity there, but he leaves that fight relatively unscathed here. Still just some glancing blows from both teams here. 4 minutes on the clock here. The kills, though, will start to ramp up as time ticks on and turrets start to be targeted here. As now everyone reaches level 7 here. Extra Thick and Yaoi Addict trying to dive in, trying to find any means necessary, any route into in between Steph and Cloudy, but Seal9 here with the advantage on health here. Cloudy still basically at full. Extra Thick and Yaoi Addict both with some wounds here. Just long-range glancing blows, no diving just yet, so I think we're seeing a similar playstyle, George, potentially to what we saw between Nat and Joe and Team Ultimates. Very, very slow, very conservative, and sort of a bit of a slow burner, this one.
Yeah, Steph looking for a little bit of poke there, but unable to find anything, and getting poked a little bit by Yaoi Addict instead. As we can see here, the Nidalee and Kane with their items. And yeah, Talon there as he died, he's on that second item now, but Nidalee holding on to that item anvil, probably just forgot to use it whilst in base, but that's whatever. Yeah, Extra Thick looking for an engage here, ulting inwards, but unable to find much with it. Unfortunately, he's pretty low on mana and, you know, missed his charm, so unable to get any follow-up on that, unfortunately.
So nothing going for Extra Thick that time, but there'll be plenty more opportunities to make those ultimates count here. However, it's still 1-0 to Seal9 here, with Cloudy and Steph also at a HP advantage, and we're just slightly creeping into red team territory here with the minions fighting on the border of that first red turret. No real damage, though, being done so far. Nearly 6 minutes on the clock. You see just in the top right. A small bit of damage has been done to Yaoyadic Recovering's first turret there. Of course, the win condition being the team who can first destroy both enemy turrets and their inhibitor is an instant win, even if they have less kills.
Nexus, don't worry.
Nexus.
Just because last week we had some games went a little bit too quickly, so we decided to push it up to the Nexus. So they are fighting for the Nexus this game, just so we can have a little bit more time.
So is that after the inhibitor?
Yeah.
Oh,
You'll
okay.
see maybe.
So just an extra stage.
Yeah. The
Okay.
Nexus looks like the inhibitor. It's bigger, a lot bigger, and makes a bigger explosion. Jesus, Kane going in for a engage there, but Ari just missing the charm, getting ignited. Kane going back in, but flashing away from the Ari orb. Nidalee jumping on the extra thick, who was already low, and Kane just surviving the burst from the Talon. And unfortunately, the Yaoi addicts didn't have any way to recover from that fight.
An instant ace there for blue team there. Of course, Seal9 now starting to do some real damage to Yaoyadic's first turret, and now done. Although Steph taken out by a turret, but that does not matter. It is now 3-0 on the kill board and 1-0 on the turret board. It is all coming up. Seal9 here. Yaoyadic recovering, potentially not going back-to-back to start the season here. Of course, a lot of time, though, still left to go. Steph and Cloudy both have been taken out by the turrets, but that is of no credit points-wise to Yaoyadics here, as they will have to start working on Seal9's first turret to start making any inroads on that advantage here. Now down to half HP, potentially able to take out this first turret, and indeed they do, and potentially going to start working on that second turret, as Cloudy and Steph do both immediately respawn here. A bit of chip damage done to that second turret, but now Cloudy trying to shoo them away here, as all of a sudden the game may have been turned on its head somewhat, as Yaoyadics have drawn level with regards to the turrets. They've taken out Seal9's first line of defense here, but now Cloudy and Steph full health, same with Yaoyadics. I do wonder if the fighting is going to start ramping up at this point.
Yeah, definitely. A little bit of some strategic metagaming, like we mentioned earlier, from Steph and Cloudy there. Obviously taking that turret and then immediately getting executed by the next turret, so they could get that recall, spend their gold, so they wouldn't be at a disadvantage in the next fight. Talon here going in with that final form, ulting and doing quite a bit of damage to Steph with that Mad Scientist augment, making him a little bit smaller and a little bit speedier, just able to run away from a Yaoi addict. Look at him, little speedy little guy there.
So Yaoyadic's doing the damage there, and that's going to put Seal9 a bit on the back foot in this current engagement here, though. Steph running away to try and prevent any further harm on just about 50% HP, but now one-on-one with Yaoyadic as Extra Thick and Cloudy on the left-hand side of your screen now. Steph and Cloudy try to get some healing done as they try and push Yaoyadic further away. Yaoyadic himself down to about 50% HP. Extra Thick still on full here, and with a full blue bar there as well. But still nothing going there really for either team. They're in a bit of a stalemate at the minute by Seal9's second turret. But I fear that potentially a couple kills here for Seal9 could really put a dent in Yaoyadic's progress. But I think at this point, just getting that second turret may be the difference maker. And could swing the momentum anyway here. But right now, as 10 minutes have ticked by in this first game, we're still in something of a stalemate here, just glancing blows at the minute.
Yeah, definitely. Just getting a bit of gold from those minions. I'm sure a fight will ensue eventually. As you see there, Steph looking for some picks, looking for some poke. But yeah, quite funny that last week, Extra Thick and Yaoi Addicts finished their game in 10 minutes. So it's good to see a little bit more of a dynamic gameplay here. Extra Thick missing that charm again, just missing the opportunity to engage on that Nidalee, who's a little bit less tanky than the Kayn, so easier to make a pick on. But yeah, Steph looking for that poke, hitting the snowball against the Talon, not taking it, unfortunately not going to engage on that Talon. probably because that Nidalee is a little bit too far back for it to be a safe engage.
Yeah, definitely still in something of a stalemate. I think both teams looking for the optimal conditions really to go for an engagement, but nothing really coming up. Steph though does dive on extra thick. Cloudy in tow as well. Yowie Addicts with a big one of damage done there, down to about 50%. HP now retaliates on Cloudy, but nothing going just there. Steph dives back in looking for some damage to be done there. Yowie Addict down to about 2/3 of his max HP here. Extra thick now down to about 30%. Can Seal9 get the picks here needed to potentially take down Yowie Addict's second turret? That would be a big swing in momentum, but Yowie Addict does get some heals, as does Extra Thick, down to just under half. And once again, the fight peters out here with nothing really going for either team, but they have moved further towards red territory here, potentially to the detriment of Yowie Addicts here, as they currently are 3-0 down on the kill board, but of course are even Stevens with one turret destroyed apiece here. And potentially Steph going towards the back line here, getting taken out by a turret. I do wonder what the strat might have been there from Steph. To a novice league player, that seemed like a bit, I don't know, self-detrimental.
Don't worry, I will give you a little bit of a rundown as to why he's done that. So as Kayn, your E allows you to walk through the walls. That's why every now and then he'll just disappear into the walls. It's a little bit of a strategic recall to be a little bit of a strategic death to be able to recall, get those items while their team is pushed up. So it's a little bit more difficult for the enemy team to push back into them and take that turret. So now Steph can come back with the items and ensure that they will be stronger in the fight. So when he gets back, he's probably really gonna look for an engage. As we can see here, Cloudy looking for a bit of poke on that extra thick. I'm sure when this Kayn gets back, he will look for an engage. As we see here, him walking up. Also, Kayn is a character that can switch forms based on the amount of damage he does to enemies. So definitely looking to get that, as he can only change in base. But as we can see here, going in, ulting on the extra thick for that guaranteed hit and hitting that Yowie Addict with the W there. Unfortunately, not anything the Yowie Addicts can do against Steph, as he is that item up thanks to that little recall.
So we saw Steph purchasing Cyrilda's Grudge, that was, and that looks to have been coming in to great effect for Steph here. Now, Storm Surge and Shadow Flame for Extra Thick, of course, being out of the battle, does have the impetus now to purchase their own items, of course, but now working on that second turret. A second turret has been destroyed. It is now all Seal9, 4-0 up on the kill board, 2-1 up on the turrets, but of course they are now pushed back. The momentum swings inversely here, with the Yowie Addict and Extra Thick on just a little bit more HP. Steph not really carrying that much momentum anymore, but still much, much stronger, as you mentioned, with that essentially tactical self-elimination there. Does go into the walls ever so slightly, just trying to evade any sort of harm there for the minute. But now, as you see in the bottom right, we are basically right in the middle of the map, slightly more into Seal9's territory here, as the Yowie Addicts are starting to try and push back to get towards Seal9's second turret, but Cloudy and Steph both working in tandem to push back here. And I do wonder if they might be able to get a couple extra picks and start working on that inhibitor, as Extra Thick now, as Steph is on a killing spree. It's 5-0, takes down Extra Thick, and Yowie Addict now in a 2v1. Could it be 6-0 on the kill board, and potentially the inhibitor as well taken down for Seal9? They are absolutely doing the business right now, and Extra Thick still a far cry out from respawning. 15 seconds on the clock, and it is another team wipe for Seal9. 6-0 on the kill board. Cloudy destroys the inhibitor, and now 6-1 here as Yowie Addict does shut down Cloudy. But we are now working on that Nexus here for Seal9. It is all coming up blue team here. And now Cloudy purchasing Rabadon's Death Cap. Obviously in death there, about 15 seconds out from respawning, to potentially put the nail in the coffin here and seal game 1 for Seal9.
Yeah, wow, I like that. Seal game 1 for Seal9. Devious, enjoyed that. But yeah, a really nice engage from Steph there, a little flash Q. Unfortunately for the Yaoi addicts, that Kane is a little bit too tanky. I believe one of his augments gives him a shield every time he dashes, and his main ability, excuse me, gives him a little bit of a dash, gives him a dash, period. But yeah, uh, but also has the Mad Scientist augment. So when he dies, he will either become large and gain health or become small and gain speed. And unfortunately for the Yaoi addicts, they don't have enough like tank busting capabilities to be able to deal with that Kane. So long fights just aren't gonna work for them. As we can see here, Cloudy jumping on the Yaoi addict, but Talon ulting, but Kane also ulting onto the Talon, avoiding the Talon ult, which is just going to negate a lot of the Talon's damage. But yeah, as we can see here, CL9 walking away with the majority of their health, while the Yaoi addicts have less than half.
Yeah, I saw a brilliant bit of poke damage there for Cloudy on Extra Thick again as well, just chipping away ever so slightly. There was a big one of damage, about 20%. On Extra Thick, and now jumping on Yaoi Addict, and this could be 7-1 here, and it is, and now a 2v1. Cloudy starts to push on Extra Thick here. Steph as well in tow with Kane, which he's shown to be really proficient in at the moment. It's why it's his most played champion. Extra Thick, though, doing a good job with that staying power, but now working on that Nexus. Red turret destroyed. Now just one more to go, and it will be game, set, and match in this first game for Seal9. 7-1, now 8-1, and that will be it. Seal9 take game one of match one of game one here. 8-1 on the kill board, and taking all of Yaoi Addicts, Nexuses, and turrets and inhibitors. Meanwhile, Yaoi Addicts only got the one turret down. So a dominant display from Seal9 in that first match of game one. How do you summarize that first match there, George?
Well, it was I would say it was quite a dominant victory from Seal9. Yaoi Addicts were only able to get that one turret, I believe, which they got after Seal9 executed themselves. So some good strategies with maybe a little bit of counterplay. But unfortunately, the matchup for Seal9 was a little bit unfortunate. Not Seal9, for the Yaoi Addicts was a little bit unfortunate, as their champions couldn't really do much against the really beefy Kane or the really far-range Poké that also had the final form. So whenever she ulted, she would also become really beefy and tanky herself, with a lot of staying power, but also incredible amounts of damage. But yeah, overall, a good played game. I enjoyed watching that.
I did, definitely was entertaining from the start. Of course, a slow start, as I think most of these games I think are going to be with the nature of 2v2 Aram Mayhem, but I mean 8-1 on the kill board by the end. Firstly, a dominant victory for Seal9, but it showed that they weren't afraid to get their hands dirty, especially in the latter half of that game. Engagements were plentiful there, but obviously we look at just the gulf in the scoreboard there. 8-1 on the kills, and of course only the one turret for Yaoi Addicts. You do wonder, what do they have to do potentially to claw back a draw from this first game?
Well, maybe after playing against CO9, they'll develop their own little metagaming strategies, maybe just to, have the ability to not be so behind in those fights. Like we mentioned, CL9 being able to unalive themselves,
Yeah,
execute themselves so they could get that recall, so they could get those items to have that advantage in those fights. But yeah, so hopefully Yaoi Addicts will be able to play them back on that. Get some
definitely.
self-executes, get some recalls.
They will have learned a lot from that game. Of course,
Yeah.
Seal9 really sort of doing the business as by far the most dominant display we have seen so far this season. Of course, it's early doors, only week 2, but still all to play for in this first game. But of course, match 2 will be coming up very shortly. It's Yaoi Addicts recovering versus Seal9. It's 1-0 to Seal9 in this best of 2 bout so far to kick off week 2. We're going to be jumping in just a few seconds for game number 2.
What are your predictions for this game?
Ooh. Last few seconds. I'm going to say Yowie Addicts to claw back a draw here. I think will be for match 2 of game 1. Yowie Addicts recovering, I think, are going to notch back a draw here. I think make things a little bit tighter up at the top of the league phase standings. We'll have a look and see in just a few moments.
Yeah, I would like to see a draw game as well. So far, all we've seen are some dominant victories, but as we know, Yowie Addicts were our dominant winners of last week. So hopefully they can prove themselves a little bit more and get that win against Seal 9 just to stop them from getting those 3 points, as that would put them pretty high up on the table on the current standings.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, actually, if we take the current league phase standings, of course, this is Seal 9's first game and Yowie Addicts' second game. So even if Yowie Addicts only claw back a draw, they will take the lead officially, uncontested in the league phase standings. Of course, that does depend on Team Ultimus's game as well. As things stand, we've had only sweeps so far, hence Team Ultimus and Yowie Addicts share first place. So a draw game, I think, would be nice. It would definitely even things out a little bit more, make things a bit more interesting as we come a little bit closer to the semi-finals here.
Ever inching closer to
The big time.
the big time, yeah. Maybe while we're here, we'll explain a little bit about the tournament format after the 6 weeks. So naturally, after winning a game, teams will gain a point. However, if they win both games, they will gain that additional third point just to limit ties a little bit. So the max points a team can get are 12, as they only play 4 games. So yeah, had to math that for a second, as they only play 4 games. But after 6 weeks, the players will go into a semi-final stage where the top 4 teams will play against each other for that final game, and then there will be a third place game for the losers of the semi-final game, and then the grand final. But at the very end, we will also be having a very fun 5v5 Aram Mayhem game, as Hive Esports is all about the whimsy of gaming, I guess.
The whimsy and the
The
fun, of
whimsy.
course. I think we're going to keep that tradition of the fun games at the end of the season. We had 2 at the end of the Team Fight Tactics series, of course,
Yeah.
including me making an absolute buffoon of myself in one of them. But that was, of course, a bundle of fun as well. It's all about the fun and the whimsy.
Yeah,
When we're not lighting the fire of competition, of course. At the end of the day, we have the bees, we have the flowers, the bright, pretty colours.
Yeah.
It's all about the fun at the end of the day. But I think we're going to be jumping into the game in just a few seconds. So it's match 2 of game 1, Yowie Addicts versus Seal 9.
Game 1, round 2. Game 1, game 2,
Game, match, round,
second.
all terms being used confusedly, interchangeably.
Yes.
But I think the audience at home know roughly what we're on about. At least I would
Yes.
hope. Otherwise, we are misleading a whole bunch of people.
I'd hope so. Yeah, round 2 of the first game. As we can see here, Yowie Addict on Tom Kench and Extra Thick on Warwick. Some very, very good 1v1 champions here. Very good in small fights. Some very good picks here. Steph here on Echo and Cloudy on Syndra. Echo, a really strong champion at the moment, able to dish out massive amounts of damage really quickly. However, Warwick and Tom Kench, pretty tanky champions. They're going to be able to withstand that burst damage from Echo, especially as both the Echo and Syndra are magic damage dealers, so they are going to be able to buy lots of magic resist. Echo and Syndra looking for some poke on Extra Thick and Tom Kench here, but they have a bit too much sustain, not able to do much in the early game.
Yeah, looks like, obviously, Yowie Addict on Tom Kench, though, as you mentioned, a great 1v1 champion. That's, of course, going to come to benefit in a lesser person format here. 5v5, of course, maybe not as strong, but 1v1, 2v2, that surely must be where the strength lies with that hero pick. So definitely packing some strength here is Yowie Addict. That's something to look out for. Potentially a means back into this game to try and claw back a draw here. But still, yeah, as you mentioned, a lot of sustain here. I think that's going to play into sort of the slow start that we're going to see in this game. But what we saw first game, of course, is the way that Seal9 were able to hold their own in the territory, where usually in week 1 we see a lot of momentum swinging back and forth with kills obviously removing players from the field. Momentum would swing in terms of where we were on the field, but Seal9 would very often find themselves in red territory, and Yaoi Addicts really couldn't break through like they potentially wanted to. So I do wonder if maybe that'll actually help Yaoi Addicts' case here now with that sustain, whether they can use that to potentially push back on Seal9 just a little bit. We'll have to wait and see, but 3 minutes on the clock. Is there anything standing out to you at the moment, George, or is it just a bit of a slower start like we've seen a lot of?
Well, despite the Aoya Addicts having quite a bit of sustain, they are pretty low. They are pushing this wave, which means they are going to be under that turret of Cloudy and Steph, which means they're not going to be able to get as much sustain off. However, they do a little bit better in those extended fights, so letting themselves get poked and is going to not benefit them very much. Syndra using her ult on that Warwick there, but Tahm Kench ulting the Warwick, eating him, giving him a little bit of protection from that engage from the Syndra and the Echo, potentially just saving the Warwick there, which is pretty good, pretty good.
Yeah, it looked like Extra Thick really had their back against the wall there. Very, very low on HP at one point, but still actually fairly low on HP, but was saved sort of by that Tahm Kench, as you mentioned. Steph and Cloudy just trying to continue with the pressure here, the poke damage here to try and negate the healing that the turret is providing to Yaoi Addicts here, and now both of them find themselves lower than 50% HP. This could potentially be a route into a potential dive here for Seal9, potentially to start working on that first turret, as well as more minions come from the red territory here, but nothing quite going here for Seal9. They'll have to wait a little bit longer as we near the 5-minute mark to start making some progress on eliminating that first turret. We'll see if they can replicate their dominant performance from the first match of Game 1 here, but still, Yaoi Addicts and Extra Thick, I don't think are really able to sort of advance and jump into the fight as potentially they may want to with how low on health they are, but Extra Thick now not shying away from the fight here, and Steph in a 2v1, but Steph doing some brilliant damage now. Both of the Yaoi Addicts are very low here, focusing Steph as he is low, but now Cloudy jumping into the fight stuns Extra Thick. Yaoi Addicts at the back here without much means to continue that fight here. Tahm Kench now turns around and does get first blood on Steph there, and that's going to turn the tides. It's 1-0 to Yaoi Addicts on the kill board here. Can they get the ace here? They do have to fight through a wave of blue minions before they can get to Cloudy and that first turret here, and they are going to start working on that first turret with Tahm Kench here. And now a 2v1 against Cloudy, but Cloudy doing some good damage. However, Extra Thick is going to take out Cloudy, and it is going to be a 2v1 as it's a trade between Extra Thick and Cloudy. Cloudy now taking out Yaoi Addict as well. So it is 2-all here now very quickly. So still all level here as they did start to work on Seal9's turret. But now Steph will start to return the favor with some big damage on that first turret, and it's going to start advancing deep into red territory.
Yeah, a really well played fight at the start there from the Yaoi Addicts. A flash from Warwick into that heal, letting him sustain the echo damage, and then the follow-up from Warwick. However, after that push from the turret, taking the Syndra instead of taking that turret, which as we know, the turrets are more important, but as well, killing the Syndra, giving her that free recall, is going to give her that item, so she's going to come back with an advantage. However, both teams will be somewhat level as they have both come back from spawn, so they will both have those items. However, Yaoi Addict just sustaining some damage from that echo there. Blade of the Ruin King from Warwick and Dusk and Dawn from Tahm Kench. Dusk and Dawn, a really fun item on Tahm Kench at the moment, going to give him a lot of damage as well as sustain, but Blade of the Ruin King might not see much use as it is a tank busting item, unfortunately. But hopefully he'll make it work.
We'll see how these items come into play, of course, later in the game. The more respawns that everyone has, of course, the more they have, more opportunities they have to buy the items that they need to make their specific character stronger. So potentially, as you mentioned, tank busting items with that Tom Kench that really is causing problems right now. Maybe the move for Seal 9, but now Yaoi Addict jumps straight in, and we could see a team wipe here as there you go, double kill 4-2 to Yaoi Addicts here, as Steph and Cloudy both taken out there in one fell swoop, and now they're going to fight through a wave of blue minions here, and now potentially start working on that first turret. It's 1-0 to Seal 9 on the turrets, despite being 4-2 down on the kills. However, it's now going to be all level, 1-1 on the turrets here. Potentially start doing some damage to that second turret. They do find themselves in a team fight now, 2v2, and it's disadvantage to Yaoi Addicts here on way lower health, and it could be a team wipe now for Seal 9 as Yaoi Addicts already taken out, and it is an ace here for all here as Cloudy and Steph tear through Extra Thick and Yaoi Addict here, and are now all level on kills as well. It is 4-all here. They're going to take some healing as well as they fight through this wave of red minions, and they could potentially take an advantage here if they can get some damage on that second red turret, and they do. They're going to get it down to about 75% before backing away to start recuperating for that next fight, but that was really well played there by Seal 9.
Yeah, we're seeing some really good fights from Extra Thick and Yaoi Addict. When they are full health, when they are able to engage. But they're not doing much with it after that. Their push on that wave was a little bit slow, and they were really slow taking that turret, and obviously taking that fight instead of like Seal 9 taking the execute instead, just giving them a little bit of gold. So hopefully they can make more out of their fights. Like here, Warwick ulting on the Echo, running back, but Yaoi Addict engaging on the Echo, eating the Echo to bring him back, but Echo ulting away. Just Yaoi Addict not able to finish off that Echo before he could ult to get out and get that healing, and Cloudy just sitting back being able to poke. Echo landing a stun on that Warwick. Same with the Syndra, just doing a lot of damage. Yeah, a lot of damage here. Tom Kench with the augment cheat recall, allowing him to recall mid-fight, which is going to be quite handy. Or not mid-fight, mid-game. Can recall whenever he wants, which is going to be really handy. Yeah.
You see, really well played there from Seal 9 to get out of what was really, really not the best situation for them health-wise. Steph, I think, was down to about 20% when getting ulted by that Tom Kench, played by Yaoi Addicts, but able to ult out of it really is a sort of on-the-toes thinking that I think really is required here. And, you know, that has enabled Steph to heal back up to full health, as has Cloudy. Extra Thick and Yaoi Addict not having that luxury, or they're starting to deliver some pushback against Seal 9, but still we are advancing slightly out of blue territory towards the neutral zone in the middle of the map here as the minions continue to fight. Extra Thick not quite getting the heals that I think he needs to potentially dive into and engage here. We'll see whether or not that continues to deter him. But Yaoi Addict continuing to just do some poke damage, as is Cloudy and Steph here. Now, Yaoi Addict does jump in here. Cloudy, though, sends Tom Kench airborne, completely neutralizing that threat for just a few seconds. Cloudy starting to push back against Extra Thick here. We'll see if Tom Kench can do anything about it. Near full health, though, so that will be some good sustain for Yaoi Addicts, but I don't think it will come to much at the moment. Just over 10 minutes on the clock. 4-all between Seal 9 and Yaoi Addicts here, although that may change as it is all starting to kick off around the beginning of Seal 9's territory here. Extra Thick and Yaoi Addict just trying to take as many heals as they can. That fight does quickly peter out. It's all level on the turrets and on the kills here. Nothing to separate these two teams at the moment, as Yaoi Addicts are trying to claw back a draw here.
Yeah, Steph there also with the cheat recall, being able to recall mid-fight, going to be really helpful, meaning he doesn't have to execute, which means he can really, oh my god, really efficiently get those recalls off. Sorry, couldn't find the word there, and efficiently is not the word I was looking for. But Extra Thick going for that ult there, but able to sustain the poke from Echo and Syndra thanks to all of that magic resist that he has. Tahm Kench eating Warwick to get him out of there under turret. Like, while they do have that sustain, unfortunately the Echo and the Syndra do just have a little bit more damage as they are under that turret. Echo backing here for that health. Yeah, Yaoi Addicts looking to take some turret damage, but also looking to get a pick on the Syndra, but Syndra knocking them back, and Echo coming to finish them off. Unfortunately for Yaoi Addicts, not much they can do here.
And that could well be a team wipe, and it is. Steph gets the ace here for blue team Seal 9, and that is going to be a big dent in the hopes of Yaoi Addicts here, as there's going to be 15 seconds before even one of them are going to be back on the battlefield here. They are going to make some purchases in the shop while they are still down here, but as they fight through the minions, the turret is going to potentially take out Cloudy, and it does, but now Steph is starting to work on that second turret, and it is going to get taken down. Seal 9 have turned this second match around on its head here, as they now find themselves 6-4 ahead here, and with 2 turrets destroyed to just 1 for Yaoi Addicts. However, Extra Thick and Yaoi Addict, they are going to be recuperated here on full health, having made some purchases. Cloudy as well executes themselves on that second turret to be able to make some purchases for themselves. That's going to very much neutralize this next fight, as Steph as well follows suit here with a purchase of the Oblivion Orb here. And they will soon both make their way back to the neutral zone and will start fighting once again. But now it's advantage Seal 9.
Yeah, Oblivion Orb, a very good choice of items here, as it applies grievous wounds to the enemies he attacks. So it's going to reduce the sustain from the Warwick and the Tahm Kench by about 40%. However, if the Warwick and Tahm Kench can sustain enough, then it shouldn't make too much of a difference. However, Echo able to take those recalls, able to stay on top of those items again, being able to make them really efficient recalls. Extra Thick and Yaoi Addict, really good team fighting potential, and they will definitely scale into the late game. And if they manage to make it that far, then Extra Thick and Yaoi Addict will have a greater advantage than Steph and Cloudy, as there's only so much they can do in the late game as mages. But yeah, Warwick and Tahm Kench, both tanky bruisers who are going to scale as they do lots of damage as well. Echo getting a little bit of poke on the Yaoi Addict here, but the grey health from the Tahm Kench is just going to heal it back up. A little bit of poke on the Echo from the Tahm Kench, doing lots of damage thanks to those magic missiles. Tahm Kench, the Yaoi Addict's going to take that turret so they can get some fighting power on Seal 9. Going to do lots of damage, force Steph to ult. Will they be able to do enough damage to take out the Echo? Yes, they will. Focusing on this Syndra now.
And this is starting to look very, very bad for Seal 9, but Cloudy manages to turn it around there and take out, that was Extra Thick. And now Yaoi Addicts on very, very low HP here with potentially no way out, and it is an ace for Cloudy. So that's Yaoi Addicts drawing level on the turrets with 2 turrets destroyed apiece now. But 8-5 on the kill board now, completely neutralizing that attack. Steph as well will be joining the fray in just under 5 seconds here. So you'd have to say potentially advantage to Seal 9 here, as Cloudy advances towards Yaoi Addicts territory here, with Steph in tow as well. Extra Thick now does respawn. Yaoi Addicts will not be too far behind, but Seal 9 just showing how good they are at team fighting here. As well, particularly, you know, you mentioned the sustain that particularly Tahm Kench has as such a bulky champion, but still 8-5 on the kill board just shows how potent Steph and Cloudy's damage output has been this game. But still 2-all on the turrets, so Yaoi Addicts still very much have a way back into this match here. We'll see if they can do anything with it, as this is now going to be a very neutral start to this fight here. As both teams are on relatively full HP here. However, Cloudy and Steph, I think, have charged up their ults a little bit more than Yaoi Addicts have, as Extra Thick does jump on Cloudy as Syndra, but nothing going there. They are going to start working, though, on that inhibitor. Are they going to take it out? They are. And that is going to give them the advantage here in terms of actually meeting the win condition here. They're down on kills, but they've taken out Seal9's first inhibitor. Now just 3 more structures to be destroyed here as part of the Nexus. And once you destroy the Nexus, the game is yours. So we'll see if they can claw back a draw here, can Yaoi Addicts, but still Seal9 holding firm by their Nexus, but we are very, very deep into blue territory now. I think red team now are starting to scale and may well be in the hot seat here to potentially claw back a draw in this best of 2.
Yeah, the Yaoi Addicts here doing well, unfortunately succumbing to some silly plays, but I think their champion diff is gonna help them out here, as again, they have the ability to go for that more magic resist while still doing damage, leading them to be more tanky. However, if they fight under those turrets, they're gonna take more damage as the turrets do physical damage. So while they don't take any damage from the Seal9 team, they are still going to take lots of damage from the turrets. Seal9 seem to be holding their own pretty well. They're going to defend these turrets really aggressively. So without some really coordinated play from the Yaoi Addicts, I fear they're not going to be defeatable.
Definitely it looks to be that way here as the Yaoi Addicts are really starting to scale nicely here. I think it's just a matter of time before they start to do some really major damage on those final structures to potentially take match 2 here of game 1. Yaoi Addict is back after having self-executed to make a purchase. Kayanik Rukan there for Tom Kench, now waddling over as well. Cloudy makes the same play for Zonya's Hourglass. I think players starting to make their final purchases for their final team fights here, but now Yaoi Addicts starting to advance towards Seal9's territory just a bit. Steph trying to get some poke damage, but nothing really happening at the moment. Yaoi Addicts simply holding firm now, waiting for the advantage to come to them, as they do have an extra inhibitor destroyed there. Cloudy and Steph somewhat with their backs against the wall here. Their objective now really just to stop the remaining structures from being destroyed for as long as they can. But Yaoi Addicts are going to continue to scale up here, as now that first structure is starting to be damaged here, down to about 75% of its max HP, but Extra Thick down to half. Has to back out of the fight as the minions now for red team begin to charge forward here, disrupting Cloudy and Stefan, is doing a bit more chip damage to that first Nexus structure.
Yeah, Kayanik Rukan definitely a very good item here, as it's like the ultimate anti-burst mage item, as it gives you a really thick magic shield, preventing you from taking magic damage whilst the shield lasts, which is going to be very useful against Seal9 here. But actually I think walking into some poke, maybe you're looking for a 1v2, but Tom Kent on his way back from that cheat recall. Red team here with a really stacked wave. Hopefully that will be able to push into the Nexus turrets.
Definitely have to wait and see whether this sustain continues to scale up as well for Yaoi Addicts here, as they now do jump into a team fight. Tom Kent's grounded, but Steph now isolated, and Yaoi Addict does get the pick on Steph. Now it's a 2v1 against Cloudy, and despite being down on the kill score, it could be all coming up Yaoi Addicts here, as they now find themselves potentially working on that first structure. But the blue inhibitor respawns. They've re-destroyed it though, so a very small subversion there against Yaoi Addicts, as now that first blue turret destroyed, followed quickly by the second one. They now just have to work on that final Nexus there, and they can take this game by the scruff of the neck, and they are going to claw back a draw here. Yaoi Addicts recovering will come back to draw against Seal9 after being trounced in that first game. It will be a 1-all stalemate between Yaoi Addicts recovering and Seal9 to finish off game 1 of week 2.
Yeah, definitely a really well played game there. Like, we saw some silly plays, but thanks to the scaling and power of the champions that Yaoi Addicts had obtained, unfortunately, CL9 were just unable to do anything. But yeah, there were some really, really good plays from the Yaoi Addicts there, where like Warwick would ult in, and then the Tom Kench ult would get the Echo to finish him off and take him away from that Syndra, delaying that Echo ult from preventing him from doing anything. But yeah, some really good gameplay there.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, it's the first instance that we've seen Yaoi Addicts or anyone able to actually win from behind on kills. In terms of kills, it finished 8-6 to Seal 9. But of course, as you mentioned, the scaling that their champions had was just all that was needed. And Yaoi Addicts able to completely wipe out all of Seal 9's structures. I think Seal 9 maybe got a couple turrets down, but that was just about it. So very much a tale of two halves here, with Seal 9 dominating in match number 1, and Yaoi Addicts very smartly coming back for match 2. But that will mark our quick intermission here at the end of game 1 of week 2 of the Hive Esports League of Legends series. We'll be back in just a few minutes for Team Ultimus versus Grompies to see how Grompies will do in their very first outing in the series. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to twitch.tv/Hive Esports Games for coverage of the second half of week 2 of the Hive Esports League of Legends series Aram Mayhem 2v2 tournament. In case you're just tuning in, Yaoi Addicts Recovering just played a 1-all draw versus Seal9. Seal9 took the win comfortably in match number 1 with an 8-1 win on the kills, and with Yaoi Addicts only able to get one turret knocked out, but they turned it around, limiting Seal9 to just the 2 turrets knocked out, while they took out all of Seal9's structures, despite losing 8-6 on kills, playing out a 1-all draw, which, as things stands, puts Yaoi Addicts Recovering at the top of the league phase standings, pending this result between Team Ultimus and Debutantes Grand Piece featuring Tai and Impromptu, both of which we'll be seeing for the very first times tonight. So with that said, of course, we've seen Team Ultimus in action in their win versus Nat and Joe in week 1, but they've now got a new opponent in Grumpies who we, as casters, are unfamiliar with in terms of Hive Esports. They're both making their debuts. What could we potentially expect to see from Game 2?
Well, like you mentioned, not too familiar with the players in Grumpies. We have Impromptu and Tai. I know Impromptu is a big Galio fan, so if we see Galio, then that would be maybe a little bit of unfair advantage. I'm pretty sure he has upwards of like 1 million mastery points on Galio, which is absolutely crazy.
That's a lot.
I was gonna say, yeah. But yeah, hopefully some excitement as it's a little bit unknown. Dynamic games.
Definitely, and the clock is just about striking 7 o'clock here, so we are pretty much perfectly on time here as well to kick off Game 2 between Team Ultimus and Grumpies. If Team Ultimus are able to take the win, they will stand uncontested at the top of the league phase standings on 6 points. As of right now, they sit currently in second place behind Yaoi Addicts Recovering, of course, who have just played out a 1-all draw with Seal9. Just before we jump into the game in about a minute or so's time, why don't we get some quick predictions, starting with you, George, for who might take it or whether it ends in another stalemate?
Because I'm not too familiar with Grumpies, I'm going to say this game is going to be a 1-1. I'm not again, I think I don't think they're bad. I think they're pretty good. But whether or not they're good enough to beat Ultimus like we saw last week, some really well played games from Ultimus, maybe they'll prevail a little bit stronger.
Definitely. I mean, Team Ultimus, their whole mantra so far has been that this tournament is free cheese.
Yes.
Or that the cheese is free. They've been stealing all the cheese, at least in week 1. They trounced Nat and Joe in week 1, of course, with no disrespect to Nat and Joe. Of course, that does include a reigning Hive Esports champion, if we cast our minds back to the Teamfight Tactics series. But we've got ranks of all the way up and down the ladder. We've got some that are silver, some all the way up to diamond and emerald and platinum. So a vast range of ranks, and yet we've seen some very, very close matchups. No such trouncings where it's not even close at any one point. So definitely going to create an interesting matchup. I think I'm going to go the same direction and say it's going to be a 1-1. We're very unfamiliar with Grumpies, of course. We know what Team Ultimus are capable of, but Tai and Impromptu are names that they do ring bells around the community as well, and as capable players for sure. Of course, we're just yet to see them in this particular setting. So I think a 1-all draw is fair. I think Grumpies to take game 1 and then Ultimus to take game 2.
Okay.
What do you think?
I'm gonna similar, but Ultimus for game 1, Grumpies game 2.
There we go.
I'm gonna call it the myths versus the legends, because the Grumpies are kind of myths within the Hive Esports, and then Ultimus are the current legends of the Aram Mayhem 2v2, and I'm sure they'll enjoy being called legends anyway, so a little ego boost before the game starts.
Exactly. There you go. So speaking of Team Ultimus, of course, we've seen them in action already in week 1, and we know roughly how they play, as will Grumpies if they did their homework and watched back the broadcast. We know that they tend to sort of start slow, sort of metagame it a little bit. Are Grumpies going to be taking that into account? What do Grompies potentially have to do to take down Team Ultimus, knowing roughly how they play?
Yeah, well, if Ultimus gets some champs that like to sit back a little bit again, then I will definitely say that they're going to do that. Whether or not Grumpy's responds accordingly to that, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe we'll be able to more accurately predict it on the second game, as we'll know a little bit more about their personality and a bit about their gameplay. Um, but I think the sit back and wait for the enemy to mess up is a pretty good strategy at the moment. Um, but yeah, I think it could be a pretty even game.
Definitely. I think it's a good point to make, to be fair, about the sort of mistakes that sometimes players can make. Of course, it's a very novel format. Aram Mayhem 2v2. It's not a conventional League of Legends format. Of course, this is usually a 5v5 game mode, and 2v2 is not something you really do in League at
Yeah.
all, so players are unfamiliar and such and such. So, of course, just a minute ago, we did have a little bit of a tech hiccup behind the scenes, but that's okay. We'll be jumping into Team Ultimus versus Grompies in just a minute. But of course, you mentioned potentially getting champions that like to sit back. Of course, that did complement Team Ultimus in their first matches against Nat and Joe. Potentially, how dependent, I suppose, is it on the champions that you get, champions that you roll, essentially, of the nearly 200 that do exist in League
Yeah.
of Legends? How dependent is that on A, how you play, B, potentially your chances of winning, and sort of how you're going to go about a novel format like ARAM 2v2?
Yeah, well, there's a few components to this, a few variables. Obviously, if Team Ultimus gets some champions that want to play back, that's going to be good for them. That means they can safely farm under turret, get that gold, and then look for mess up plays or go for those executes to cash on that gold. However, if Grompies get some more ranged champions that like to poke from a distance, the playback style isn't going to benefit Ultimus as much, as they will be harassed and just whittled down from turret without having any opportunity to really do anything. Some champions that come to mind are like Zerath or Vel'Koz, who can poke you from really far away. But like we mentioned, Impromptu is a Galio player, so if he gets that Galio, then he's gonna like it if they have some ranged poke champions. But as we go into this game, we were gonna find out who they're playing.
As we are here for Game 2, Match 1 of the Hive Esports League of Legends Series in Week 2. It is going to be Grompies in the blue and Team Ultimus, pardon me, in the red. And what champions have we got on the field?
Well, Impromptu is on Rakan here. Kitsune Maison or Tai is on Draven. And then Piff is on Zoe and Entity is on Sion. As you will see, Piff is a ranged mage who likes to hit you, nuke you actually from really far away. Zoe likes to do that. But Sion likes to farm early game just so he can kill minions, and as that gives him lots and lots of health to stack and scale up on. Rakan on Impromptu is a very engaging champion like we just seen here. But Draven is also a character that likes to farm a little bit, but he needs kills to be able to snowball and pop off later in the game. As you saw that a little engage from Rakan on that Sion, able to jump on him but then quickly jump off. Being put to sleep here by Zoe, going to take a lot of poke damage there, but looking for an engage, doing quite a bit of damage on that Zoe. Sion looking to knock them up to stop them engaging. And a trade that keeps going. Draven being put to sleep, unable to finish off that Sion, Impromptu taking that paddle star from Zoe, leaving Ultimus fairly low, but being low themselves.
Definitely a lot of wounds there from that first fight, and now Grompies are going to start to lay into Ultimus's first turret here as well, with the minions just doing those bits of chip damage, getting the first turret down to about 75 or so percent, maybe down to about 60 now. Tai just trying to do that final bit of chip damage on Entity as Sion here. Zoe, though, does take a bit of a hit there and is now fairly low herself here. But now Entity as Sion does jump in, however, is going to get picked off by Kitsune Maison there. And it's now 1-0 to Grompies, and it could well be a team wipe here. Entity, though, does back out of it though. Getting taken out, excuse me, by the turret here. It is now 1-0 on the kill board to Grompies, as in come Piff and Entity again to try and capitalize on Ty and Impromptu. Being quite low in health, they do have to back out of it just a little bit, trying to get some poke damage there on Entity as the ever bulky Scion there channeling there, but nobody home there for that attack for Entity. However, the turret's remaining in pristine condition for Grompies. Maybe not for much longer though, as the red minions do come in and start doing some chip damage on that turret. Ty now very low on HP, does though get some heals though for some extra staying power here. However, their first turret now has taken some damage as well here, so fairly even footing here. Only 1-0 on the kill board in favor of Grompies, but of course that does give Team Ultimus the opportunity to make some purchases in the shop, but still fairly even as we're just under 5 minutes in.
Yeah, unfortunately there for Entity looked to maybe flash in, get a Q off, waited well for that Rakan to knock him up, so he was unable to stop that channel, but got bursted down a little bit too quickly to get that channel off, knocking both Ty and Impromptu up here. Ty receiving a shield, protecting him from damage, but Entity looking for the kill. Ty receiving a heal, but getting bursted down by that Zoe. A very well played engage from Entity and Piff there. Yeah.
That heal not quite enough to give Ty the staying power needed to sustain in that fight, and it's now 1-all on the kill board here between Grompies and Team Ultimus, and now in a 2v1 as Ty now just despawns. Potentially start to work on that first turret, but in comes now Ty on full HP, of course. Entity and Piff not with that luxury. We'll see. As now put to sleep is Impromptu. Entity though as well with some damage done, and Ty does get the pick on Entity. But Entity now coming back, of course, does resurrect, but that will be very quickly put down there, and there will be an extra 10 seconds before that Scion is back on the field once again though. Impromptu put to sleep there by Piff. Ty trying to do some poke damage as they chase out red team from the blue territory. Now we find ourselves about halfway down the map here. And it's 2-1 to Grompies on the kill board, but now Piff draws us level here. And Entity on full HP could well do some significant damage here to Grompies as they find themselves 10 seconds shy of having a full team once again. Ty has to back out of it just a little bit here. 2-all now in terms of kills as we now reach 6 minutes, but no turrets destroyed as of yet.
Yeah, the Rakan going in to look for a pick on that Zoe. Zoe just getting picked off by the Draven ult there. But yeah, Zoe sleeping that Rakan and then hitting it with the snowball, just stopping him earlier there. But yeah, Entity being forced onto turret right now as that Zoe is dead. So the Grompies gonna be looking for a little bit of push to try and get that turret.
Yeah, of course, pushing Scion back there with that pick on the Zoe. Very, very well played there by Grompies, immediately showing that they're not going to be sitting back at all here. Piff now trying to jump on Impromptu, but nobody home there after having put Impromptu to sleep there momentarily. But now back awake and ready to fight here. Entity and Piff both down to about 70% HP, but now Ty it down to very low HP and does get picked off there. Now 3-all and Impromptu in a 2v1. Not looking like the best situation for Impromptu, but is able to walk out of it. That channeling just about missing Impromptu as well. But there'll be 10 seconds before Ty is back in this game as well. And now the first turret vulnerable to attack here from Team Ultimus, and they are going to take down that first turret, you would think here, and they do. So they are 3-3 level on the kill score, but 1-0 in front on the turret. So it is advantage Team Ultimus at the moment as things stand. Ty and Impromptu are going to want to recuperate and potentially launch a counter attack to get red team's first turret taken down, but for now they find themselves just slightly on the back foot with just under 10 minutes done.
Yes. Yeah, taking a turret there. Piff landing a sleep on the Rakan. The Q just running into some minions on the way back there. But yeah, Zoe here, really good pick against the Rakan and the Draven, but the Rakan going in, Zoe landing asleep on Ty, but the minions just in the way again. Yeah, Zoe, like I was mentioning a second ago, a really good pick here, as she has lots of long range poke, but also some incredible burst damage. Rakan jumping on her, but using the flash that she picked up from her W just to get away, but surviving on very little health. Gonna have to defend this turret, but very susceptible to an engage from the Rakan and then getting hit by the Draven. But Zoe landing another sleep on the Rakan, but Sion down under turret.
Yeah, Sion getting knocked out under turret, not good for Team Ultimus at all. And of course, Sion's resurrected sort of zombie form they're taken out. And now a team wipe here for Grompies here. Could potentially draw things all level here. It's 5-3 Grompies on the kill board here, but unable to do some any turret damage here as the red minions currently pushing back against blue team here. But now the damage will start to be done here, and the first turret is lost for red team, and they're immediately almost at the second turret. You're not going to quite work on it in terms of any damage, but now jumping on blue team is Entity as Sion, but now already down to half HP. The damage output from Grompies right now absolutely astounding. Asleep though, lands on Ty, does immobilize Ty for about a second there, and that is all that is needed to turn the tides of this fight. And a double kill team wipe for Entity as Sion here takes out both Grompies players here, and it's now 5-all. Once again, we are at a stalemate in this first match here, and they're going to take some heals as well. They're going to channel against those blue minions and knock those out of the way and potentially start to work on that second turret here, as now a horde of red minions do advance into blue territory. And now the horde of red minions and with Ty and Impromptu nowhere to be seen, it's going to be 2-1 on the turrets for Team Red here. Team Ultimus, however, they are now going to immediately be engaged by Grompies here. Ty, though, already down to half here. However, a 2v1 against the Sion, though. Ty, though, with the stun landed on him. Entity with Piff in tow. Impromptu with some good self-healing there is going to push away red team here. Going to jump on Piff there with the attempt to get the pick. Is going to get Piff down to just a slither of health here, but does manage to scuttle away. Jumps now on Sion. Can he get the pick? Sends it airborne. Completely immobilized. Almost down to just a slither of HP. Can't quite get it done on Entity. Now does take down Entity to make it 6-5. However, Sion's zombie form could take out Impromptu here. Jumps on Piff here, but now is sent to sleep. Sion Zombie is taken out, and it is an ace for Grompies. So 7-5 now on the kill board. Impromptu gets a massive ace here against Team Ultimus, and now is going to take them completely out of commission for about 15 seconds here, waiting for them both to respawn. And now with some blue minions in tow, Ty is going to self-execute here, running into the Nexus to get some items here and some econ here, potentially. Entity does jump on Impromptu to stop that advance on the second turret, but that second turret is down to half after a very well-played team fight there from Impromptu.
Yeah, the Rakan here with that immunity on that Snowball after using Snowball gains that little KO ult effect. But yeah, Rakan went for that chase, like got the Sion and then got the Zoe. Like I mentioned, a little bit of a chase, but got there eventually, but allowed them to get that turret. However, Piff and Entity back coming for the inhibitor. I'm not sure if you noticed. Well, you definitely did. But Sion there with that little transform and then bouncing around. That is augment called Bounce of the Poro King, where essentially they just turn into the Poro and bounce around, gain a lot of durability, but do a lot of damage. Impromptu jumping on Zoe there. Zoe trying to engage, but Impromptu just not letting her do it, and then getting bursted down by that Draven.
Yeah, I think that was definitely something of a trade-off there. For Team Ultimus, they were able to take down another one of Grompies' inhibitors there. So 2 turrets plus an inhibitor down. Of course, there will be an amount of time before that inhibitor does respawn. It will take a couple of minutes or so, unless, of course, Team Ultimus can start to work on those final structures in and around the Nexus. But as things stand, the inhibitor for Grumpy's on a timer until it is back into play here. But for now, it is Entity and Piff with a massive advantage. Piff does get taken out, of course, as we do mention there. But of course, the trade-off being the inhibitor now taken out, which is of course a massive disadvantage for Grumpy's here. One thing that Grumpy's do have though right now is HP, at least over Entity specifically. Piff is at full, but so is Ty and Impromptu. Entity on just about 60% of his max HP there as Scion. But nothing really happening at the moment between these two, just trying to get heals now though, as Piff though does get jumped on. 2v1 though, Ty credited with the pick on the Zoe there, and Scion now 2v1 has to try and do something here. Is sent airborne though, and with immediate massive damage output there, Entity somewhat powerless really to resist here and just has to wait it out for another 20 seconds until Piff is back into play here. However, the disadvantage that Grumpy's are at now though is of course the fact that they do not have the turrets taken down, although it is going to fall though the way of Grumpy's. A second red turret is destroyed, and potentially they could start working on the inhibitor as well, as it's 10-6 to Grumpy's, showing a real prominence here in terms of team fights and raw damage output. However, they are down an inhibitor. There is a short amount of time though before that inhibitor comes back, and I do wonder whether or not that will be soon, as we just tick over towards 15 minutes. Impromptu again engaging Piff. Grumpy's have not been shy at all of engaging the enemy here. 10-6 up on kills here, and they are going to start working on the red inhibitor, with Entity nowhere to be seen at the moment. Now does respawn, but the red inhibitor is destroyed here, and it is now all even Stevens in terms of turrets and inhibitors. But now, as it's now 11-6, Ty on a killing spree here, you'd have to say. But now Scion jumps on both of them, shuts down Ty, and will soon shut down Impromptu as well, to make it 11-8, unless Impromptu can work a miracle here. May self-execute on the Nexus to stop them getting credited with it, but Zoe does take out the enemy there. So 11-8 is now the score between Grumpy's and Team Ultimus. Now everyone is going to be making some purchases, as Impromptu has another 22 seconds before he respawns, a few seconds before Ty is back in the game as well. So now all even on the turrets and inhibitors, although I think Blue's inhibitor is going to respawn fairly soon. But 11-8 to Grumpy's in terms of kills. This has not been a game deprived of any team fighting.
No, absolutely not. A very backwards and forwards game, as we like to see. But red team here with that triple stacked minion wave. Definitely going to be really good for pushing, unless Kitsune Maison can take it out. As we can see there, with those auto attacks, proccing those little rockets, going to do a lot of AoE, so no issue for him to take that. But Impromptu here jumping on the Zoe, doing lots of CC, but also a considerable amount of damage. Zoe landing that sleep and Scion knocking them up. But unfortunately, Zoe just taking too much damage to re-enter this fight here. Unfortunately, if she gets caught out, it is over for her. Trying to look at getting some damage from a distance, and yes, landing that really far Q, just going to do absolutely insane amounts of damage to that Draven, and getting the sleep Q again onto that Rakan, doing some really big damage. Zoe with those skill shots, hard to hit, but my goodness, they hit very, very hard when they do.
Yeah, definitely, and we saw that as a big pick as well for Entity to get, as that's now allowed Team Ultimus to re-destroy Grumpy's blue inhibitor there. So that is now back on around a 5-minute respawn timer, by which point this game may well be over. So that is a big inhibitor destroy there for Team Ultimus, as they continue to send another minion wave. They're on very low HP themselves though, which is going to force them to take some heals. Meanwhile, blue team here backed into a corner by the minion wave. We're going to have to spend a lot of time and resources taking out that minion wave, by which point there will be another one coming through with their name on it. And Entity and Piff now both over half HP, potentially ready to engage once again. A vastly different playstyle to what we saw versus Nat and Joe. Team Ultimus with a very much a more proactive approach to the team fighting, not afraid to get their hands dirty as they find themselves 11-9 down here on the kills, although they do have that inhibitor in the blue territory. So still fairly even game here, but now Impromptu starting to advance into red territory here with Tight in tow as well, with the health advantage here, potentially going to start working on that Nexus and to stop that inhibitor from respawning, which would put Grumpy's, or Team Ultimus, pardon me, at a massive advantage. And the structures are going to start being damaged here as well. Entity down to very low HP. Piff taken down as well as Entity. A double kill for Team Grumpy's, and they're going to take down the Scion Zombie there. And now that could well be game, set, and match as one turret is destroyed. It's 13-9 to Grumpy's. Now half damage done on the second turret, and still we are 20 seconds out from either of Team Ultimus respawning. So that is going to be game, set, and match in match number 1 of game 2, and Grumpy's on their debut are going to win 13-9 on the kill score versus Team Ultimus. So Team Ultimus will not continue their hot run of form from week 1 as they now succumb to Grumpy's at the start of game number 2. We'll wait and see if they can claw back a draw, much like Yowie Addicts did before them in game 1. But that was a very, very thrilling game, end-to-end stuff, and it ends 13-9 on the kill score to Grumpy's there, taking out the Nexus right at the very end. George, what do you make of that one? That was very, very thrilling.
That was, again, another very dynamic game, going backwards and forwards a little bit, where it kind of looked like Ultimus would win and it looked like Grumpy's would win. But yeah, Grumpy's having a little bit of a better team comp there. That Rakan, very similar to Galio, actually, but just giving him a lot of tankiness, a lot of engage, and a little bit of sustain for that Draven. Having lots of tankiness and engage, but having a lot of sustained damage on top of that. Whereas Ultimus had that Scion and the Zoe, so they had that like harsh burst damage and that tankiness, but unfortunately that sustained damage was just able to take out the tank a lot easier, allowing for them to go onto that backline. But as well, they had that Rakan who was also by himself able to get onto that backline, allowing for the killing of that Zoe to be able to, you know, take the Scion without having to worry too much. But yeah, some very good games overall.
Definitely. Of course, we still have one more game on the cards here. Match 2 of game 2 of week 2. It's a game of 2. It's been a game of 2 halves in game number 1. We'll see if it's the same again. Of course, in game number 2, Grumpy's do take the win. In match number 1 of game 2, of course, notes are going to be taken from both sides here. I think it's safe to say Grumpy's did their homework on Team Ultimus, albeit Team Ultimus didn't exactly play the same sort of way that they did versus Nat and Joe in week 1, but still absolutely a dominant performance in many aspects. Their team fighting ability was something to commend. 13 kills is the most we've seen a team get so far this season in a single match, so they're really showing how good they are in a combat perspective, and of course that's helped them, of course, to ultimately take down those turrets and inhibitors and eventually the Nexus. So if you're part of Team Ultimus, George, obviously Team Ultimus have to take a step back here and analyze sort of what, very quickly in this sort of 5-minute break, what went wrong, why Grumpy's, you know, had the advantage that they did, whether it was simply down to champions, you know, they had a very good team comp, as you mentioned, whether it's just down to the champions they drew, whether it was playstyle or what. If you're Team Ultimus, what are you potentially looking at changing for this second match here to try and get a draw out of this?
Yeah, like I mentioned and like you just mentioned, I do think the majority of the game was down to that team comp difference, unfortunately. But again, like we saw, that Zoe was able to get that high damage, even on the Rakan, was doing like 75% of that Draven's health in 1 Q. Absolutely insane. maybe if there was a little bit more peel for that Zoe, the Zoe might have been able to have survived a bit longer. However, that Rakan was just so slippery. It's hard to like um, stay on him as he can go in, CC you, and then come out immediately, letting that Draven do his thing. But because the Rakan was so tanky and he had that heart steal, he was able to do a lot of damage himself. So just being around and getting those auto attacks off, um, it was a lot of damage. So yeah, not too much Team Ultimus can do, just as long as they like keep up the good work that they're doing. I think that maybe with a little bit of a better team, if they get it, they will be more successful.
Definitely could be that way. Of course, Team Ultimus have got their backs up against the wall slightly. Um, the best they can get out of this now is a tie for first place in the league phase standings, alongside Yowie Addicts recovering. That is if they can get a draw out of this. As it still stands, the Yowie Addicts do stand on top of the pile on 4 points, Seal 9 on 1 point. Grumpy's, as things stand, on 3 points. So still Nat and Joe, um, and it would be Flowers and Autumn as well, that are currently in the elimination zone as things stand. Of course, it's only week 2 of 6. Still plenty of games left to go. Some teams have obviously played 2 games. Some have obviously only played 1. But match 2 will be coming up in just a few moments' time. So, we mentioned at the beginning of CR predictions, I said that Grompies would take game 1. You said Ultimus would take game 1. We'll see as we jump in now for match 2 of game 2, whether that prediction rings true, whether we're going to switch things up. You're going to say Grompies to take this game 2, potentially for a sweep?
Yeah. I'll say Grumpies again, just to give our debutants not the benefit of the doubt, but the support from one
Yeah.
of the Hive casters. But yeah, Impromptu and Ty with the Shen Ziggs here, and Entity and Piff on Amumu and Vigar. Very, very similar comps actually. Vigar is a scaling stacking champion who is again gonna want the game to go on for as long as possible. But the Amumu is that engaged peel that the Vigar is gonna need. And then Ziggs here, another ranged mage who is not necessarily going to want the game to scale, but isn't going to suffer as much. And then the Shen here on the Impromptu, very similar to Rakan, very similar to that Galio that we mentioned earlier. So we can definitely see the type of champions that he is more likely to play. But I think this is a very even matchup. Both teams have a lot of CC, both teams have a lot of damage. I think it's 50-50.
50-50 is the word from the expert. As Entity and Piff and Ty and Impromptu, they've switched, of course, as sometimes does happen between games 1 and 2. So it will be now Grompies occupying the red territory and Team Ultimus occupying the blue territory here. So we'll have to wait and see who comes out on top as a red minion wave quickly trounced out there by Team Ultimus there. Still very, very slow start as is the theme in these first few minutes. Everyone usually farming under turrets, trying to simply get poke damage, maybe a first blood. But beyond that, the first 5 minutes or so are simply spent sort of farming, keeping health as high as possible, trying to get econ so that eventually when the fighting does start, that recall, get the items you need, and that's sort of when the game does start to heat up. But immediately Piff down to about 55% HP there, although with a looks like some kind of force field around him, preventing any further damage. Piff already down a bit low, as is Entity as well. And now the fighting does begin with Impromptu jumping on Piff and Entity, but nobody really home there. Do get some poke damage on that first turret, but nothing major going really for Grompies there. They're going to just hang back now, let the minions do the work for them while they farm some econ.
Yeah, like I mentioned, both teams being pretty similar objectives. However, that Vigar is going to want to scale. Vigar on the Entity going to want to scale a bit more. So definitely they're going to want a bit of a slower game. However, that Ziggs is very long range, going to be able to get that poke off to harass them under that turret. So going to make farming a little bit difficult. But that Shen has some really good engage. However, that's all he's really going to be able to do. He'll be able to do some damage, but his W and his ult might not be as useful this game. His ult will be really useful for getting back into the fights after recalling. But yeah, like you mentioned on that Piff, not a force field. That is an augment called Slow Cooker. The more health he has, the more damage it does. And it just does damage within that little radius there. But yeah, I think the Ziggs has Hextech Drake. Entity on Vigar has, it's an auto cast thing that when it hits, it does like, it increases the damage the enemy takes while doing a little bit of damage itself. And I'm not 100% sure on what Impromptu has. Is that little crown on top of his head? But maybe that just means they're gonna win.
Definitely looks to be that way. As we see now, the blue turret has taken a little bit of damage. We've spent the vast majority of this first game in blue territory, and it's shown in Grompy's able to do just a little bit of chip damage to that first turret. It's down to about half HP, which of course could pay dividends later on when the fighting really does start. That sort of advantage is something you definitely can't scoff at, being able to take down that first turret just that little bit quicker here. As it still really is just poke damage here. It's a bit like sort of trench warfare. They're not really close combat. It's more so throwing bombs into the other team's camp and seeing if it works. Nice to see Piff. Fun game type poo in the chat. As yeah, definitely the slow burner sort of game mode, but definitely offers up some interesting strategies. So I would say that it definitely, I think fun would be an appropriate word to describe it. A bit more chip damage there for that first turret there for Grompy. So they're doing well here in this initial segment, but Piff still down to half HP Entity as well. So healing not really a priority for Ultimus, you'd have to imagine at the moment here, as the fighting hasn't really begun. But I think potentially we might be sort of creeping towards the first engagements in just a handful of moments, as still chip damage, the name of the game here.
Yeah, I think this game is going to be very much like Ultimus's first game, where it's going to go really slow, then it's just going to speed up really quickly. Like we mentioned, this Ziggs is going to be able to do really good poke damage, going to stop them from being able to engage and do those fights. However, Ziggs also does lots of damage to turrets. His W allows for the execution of turrets below a certain health, depending on the level of the W. So that will help a lot with taking turrets really quickly. But Ziggs' passive also allows his auto attacks to do additional damage to turrets. So yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit of poke, but then a lot of fast turret taking. However, if Entity and Piff are able to make it to that mid to late game without being pushed too far back, they will have that damage and a lot of CC to be able to control that Ziggs and then burst them down immediately while slowly taking that Shen.
Definitely, and still, it's just farming abilities at this point, really, as you see many sort of W's and Q's and E's, but not much fighting, still 0-0. 7.5 minutes into this game here, as they try to work still on that first turret. We've yet to venture at all into red territory, so their turrets and inhibitors and their nexus is going to be still in pristine condition, but long-range chip damage has actually almost taken out the first turret completely. And despite not any first blood or anything like that being shed so far, we're nearing 8 minutes. Another wave of red minions are going to just chip away ever so slightly at that first turret, to the point it's now down to really only a slither of health here. And this could be a big advantage early on, if without doing a single point of damage really of anything significant here, Grompies are going to be able to take a 1-0 lead in the turret fight here, and are now going to be able to venture deeper into blue territory here with Entity and Piff on lower HP. And despite a 0-0 score in terms of kills, 1-0 in the turrets. That's not something we've seen all season, really.
Yeah, I think I might have lied when I said it was a 50-50 game. I fear this might be going more towards a 25-75 in the favor of Grumpies. Piff looking for an engage on that Ziggs, being able to do lots of damage. Vigar following up again with that CC, but the Shen ult saving the Ziggs from the Vigar ult, but able to take that Ziggs out. The Shen trying to get on top of this Vigar, but Vigar healing from that autocast, able to sustain that Shen out. Really coming back after me saying that it might be 25-75 in the favor of Grumpies. But Entity looking for that execute to be able to get those items. Unfortunately giving it to the Shen, but Piff gonna push this wave and probably gonna look for an execute. But unfortunately the Ziggs on the way back will not secure the kill. Amumu just able to dodge the damage from Ziggs, allowing for that execute. Yeah, the team Grumpies probably unable to push fast enough to reach the turret in time before that Vigar gets back to defend it.
Yeah, definitely, and very, very well played immediately from Team Ultimus there. It was almost like they heard you say that it was advantage Grumpies. They immediately jump on Grumpies and get an ace for their troubles there. A big pick, though, from their Shen to get back to a 2-1 deficit instead of a 2-0 deficit. But now, almost half health for the second turret here, so it seems like Grumpies really laser focusing sort of the name of their game here, being the objectives, the turrets, the inhibitor, the nexuses as well. But now Kitsune Maison down to very low HP and does get slain there by Entity. A double kill. It's 4-1 to Team Ultimus with a very well played ace there. Vigar proving to be a very strong champion at this point in the match, and now it seems like they are free to work on that turret and do some big damage to that first turret. It is now 1-0, that's not a thing, 1-0 on the turret score, and 4-1 to Team Ultimus. 4 kills here, and they may even start working on that second turret to potentially put their stamp on this stage of the game. 10 minutes have just ticked by, so not much time has gone, but down to about 2/3 of its max HP is that second turret for Grumpies, fighting off those blue minions, doing that chip damage as well. Entity back up to nearly full as well. Piff up to about 70% HP. That's going to give them all the impetus they need to re-engage, as Piff now jumping on impromptu here. We'll see if Entity as Vigar can act in tow here, but now a 2v1 against Piff. That could be danger, as Entity, though, going on a killing spree, is going to shut down, or Kitsune Maison shuts down Piff near the turret. But Entity doing the business here, gets the frags needed. 5-2 now is the advantage, excuse me, for Team Ultimus there, as now Entity and Impromptu, the only remaining fighters, neither of whom you'll imagine will engage the other until their teammates are back in the fray here. Of which we'll have to wait just shy of 10 seconds, but you'll have to say with that team fighting capability, that it was what Grumpies was showing in the first game. It's now flipped on its head. It's Entity and Piff winning all the team fights at the minute, and they're 5-2 up.
Yeah, what Grumpies lacks, Ultimus has, and what Ultimus has, Grumpies lacks, and it's kind of like we had some rock, paper, scissors teams, but some absolutely incredible hooks from Piff here, like just some really long range engage that the Shen just doesn't have, but some incredible damage from the Amumu, just stopping that Ziggs in its tracks, just not letting it do anything, but then some incredible burst damage from the Vigar. Just if they're able to get that jump on Team Grumpies, then it's over, I fear. The Amumu is just able to output so much CC, but also able to output so much damage. Unfortunately, there's like not much that Team Grumpies can do, especially when Piff hits that really long-range Q on that Ziggs, just stun-locking the poor guy.
And it's another execute there for Piff, who's now going to purchase Chaotic Recurrent, as you mentioned in game number 1. A very, very powerful item to purchase there. But now 2-1 as now the focus shifts to the red inhibitor here, as you mentioned, Impromptu and Ty really unable to stop Entity and Piff getting the jump on them. This is now 7-2 with another team wipe there for Team Blue. However, of course, Team Red now are going to push up with a minion wave or two in tow. They're going to be met by some blue minions, which is going to stop them in their tracks ever so slightly. Piff does respawn. Entity will respawn in the next couple of seconds as well. And you have to imagine it's engaging time. They are, however, going to take the opportunity to engage while Piff is on his lonesome here, though. Vigar will be joining the fight in just a couple moments. You see Entity now on the left-hand side of your screen, and immediately with some strong pushback. Another stun there on Impromptu. Piff really, really potent with the crowd control here. Entity may be able to do some really big damage as well. Piff, though, really, really low, but Piff slays Impromptu here. Ty, though, is still full health, may have the impetus here to take on a 2v1. However, is just simply trying to get some poke damage while trying to stave off the charging horde here of Entity and Piff. As Entity with another big, big kill here. It is now 8-2 to Team Ultimus here, showing them why they were such strong contenders in week 1. They're now doing it again, as it's another team wipe with a very, very good bit of CC there from Team Ultimus. It is 9-2, and the red inhibitor is destroyed. This is an absolute trouncing here from Team Ultimus. Grumpy at the moment powerless to resist, and they're going to start working on the turrets as well to stop that inhibitor from respawning. Impromptu, though, quickly puts a stop to that advance, as another bit of CC, though. However, Impromptu does get credit for the pick on Piff there, and not the turrets. That's going to bring the score to 9-3, now 9-4 with a shutdown there, and a double kill for Impromptu there with an ace for red team. But still, you'd have to say Impromptu and Kitsune Maison have got something of a mountain to climb to bring this game back.
Yeah, some incredible, again, team fighting ability from Ultimus here, but getting that death recall off is definitely going to help them a little bit. Unfortunately, Grumpies aren't going to be able to push this wave fast enough by the time Ultimus gets back. I fear an Amumu engage. As soon as this Fireguard gets back, the Amumu is definitely looking for an engage on that Ziggs, and he finds it. Oh my god, a lot just happened there. Yeah, the Amumu jumping on the Ziggs, and then Entity soloing that Shen from the backline there, just showing how much damage Vigar can do. But Piff slowly whittling down that Ziggs, but doing it pretty quickly actually, not slowly at all. But yeah, the Vigar ult doing so much damage, it killed that Ziggs at like 70% health. Like, actually kind of insane.
So a huge ult there from Entity. It's now 11-4 here, and they are going to start working on the turrets, as neither of Grumpies have respawned. Their Impromptu now enters the fight, but with one turret destroyed, soon to be a second. You would imagine Impromptu is really powerless to stop it. And now the Nexus is taking some big, big damage even during this team fight. Kitsune Maison does take down Entity, but the Nexus losing health all the time. This may be game over here, as Piff continues to do the damage, and it's going to just about chip away. The Nexus is on 1 HP, and Grumpies are staying alive. Piff with a premature GG in the chat, and yet the Nexus does survive here. So Grumpies staying alive, 11-6 down. However, that is going to be a big team fight win for Grumpies. Impromptu in the chat, we're so back. They may well be, with that Ziggs coming through in the nick of time here. As now Ty and Impromptu are going to advance deep into blue territory, but they will be met by Entity as Vigar and a minion wave. Piff as well will be here in just a moment's time as well. This could be the most important team fight of the game so far, as all the time we're in blue territory, that red Nexus is healing itself. And Piff and Entity, however, do immediately some very big damage to Impromptu. We'll see if that very potent crowd control can continue here, whether they can get another 1 or 2 stuns on Impromptu and Ty. They do get a quick stun on Impromptu, and Impromptu is very, very low indeed, but not quite taken out here. Kitsune Maison now the front line here as Impromptu and Piff both looking for healing here, so nothing coming out of this particular team fight as we near the 20-minute mark. So it seemed for all the world, with the rate at which their Nexus was losing health, that Grompies were down and out, but they've managed to skate by on just a couple HP on their Nexus. Of course, that's going to be healing itself all the time. Grompies may just have a way back into this game.
Yeah, some incredible peel from Shen there, just not letting the Amumu get onto that Ziggs to allow for the follow-up of the Vigar, or let the Amumu do some damage himself. But Shen is going to suffer from that, but Amumu hitting that Q with that ult, lots of damage, and then Vigar ult hitting the Shen, doing massive amounts of damage. Just Grumpy's unable to do anything after the Ziggs getting hooked by that Amumu. Just some incredible wombo combo ability here from Ultimus, and I think this is their game.
It most certainly is. That red inhibitor does respawn right near the end, but it does not matter. Impromptu and Katsuna Maison will not even respawn in time. A trouncing from Team Ultimus to Grompies, 13-6 in match 2 of game 2, gives us our second draw of the match. Grompies took match 1 in game 2, and Ultimus replied with a 13-6 victory in match number 2, which means that we have 2 draws in week 2 and 2 sweeps in week 1. Just proves how close this league is going to be and why you should be watching right until the very end. But that is going to sum up game 2 of week 2. George, your initial thoughts after that second match?
Yeah, well, we were definitely right not to underestimate Grompies, but not to put them too high above Ultimus. Knowing our power, but knowing our limits. Yeah, like we mentioned, the myths versus the legends. A very dynamic game. Dynamic might be my favorite Hive Esports word at the moment, but again, very backwards and forwards. It really looked like Grompies had it in the beginning, but then some incredible engages from that Amumu, just stun-locking the Ziggs, making it unable to do anything, whilst the Viego followed up, and just incredible gameplay.
Definitely. So again, very much like game 1 between Yaoi Addicts recovering and CL9, it was a tale of 2 halves that ended in a dominant victory for Team Ultimus. Very similar to what we saw in their 3-0 victory against Nat and Joe, of course, in week 1, showing that they are capable of beating potentially anyone in this league, potentially a dark horse early champion pick. Obviously, we've got many more weeks of competition to go. It would be foolish to start picking champions this early, but you'd have to say Team Ultimus, along you'd say with Yaoi Addicts, really making a name for themselves, an early stake for the crown. With 2 games played and 4 points apiece, it'll be Yaoi Addicts recovering and Team Ultimus that find themselves at the top of the pile. CL9 and Grompies will be on 1 point. Nat and Joe and Flowers in Autumn will be on 0 points. So those 2 teams find themselves below the elimination line at the end of week 2. Of course, that was a very, very interesting final game, but week 2 as a whole has applied us with a lot of action. George, how would you summarize?
Again, very dynamic, some very good games from both teams, all 4 teams actually. But yeah, very interesting. However, that is all we have time for today. We will be back same time next week on Wednesday, 6 p.m. Be there or be square.
Nice.
Nice beep on there. Caught the producer off guard.
Absolutely. I think we both thought of the B point at the same time. We both pointed at the B at the exact same time.
And it's square because it's definitely not a Minecraft B.
It's a nondescript game based on 1x1 blocks. So we'll have to wait and see. However, the Evil Bee so far remains unclaimed, as they will be claimed by the champion right at the end, and it's only week 2 of week 6 of the league phase. So many more weeks of competition still to go. So with that being said, thank you so very much for watching week 2 of the Hive Esports League of Legends series. Thank you so much to all of our players as well for partaking. Thank you to George for accompanying me at the commentary table, and for all our team behind the monitor as well at Hive Esports. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.